Saturn moving into Pisces, Pluto moving into Aquarius the month of March, Mars in Cancer finally moving out of Gemini after that retro. How do you keep opening the door? Get out. Go. Go. Get out. How do you open the door? All right, so today I'm going live because I wanted to talk about the March astrology and how it's shifting what we're moving into. And we're coming into just kind of new energy and a new kind of era, especially after Saturn being in both of its ruling signs for the past 5-ish, 6-ish years. So, that's kind of where I'm at. How do I do that? I don't know. Oh, how do I do that? Oh, sorry, y'all. My sister is helping me get my life together. This is my first YouTube live. Okay. Is it letting people chat now? Okay. All right. So today I'm just wanting to talk about what's going on in March and the big shifts that are happening based on the planets. For example, we have the full moon in Virgo happening the same day as Saturn moving into Pisces, which is a big, big thing. We have Pluto moving into Aquarius, and of course, it's going to retrograde back into Capricorn a little bit in early June for a little bit of time. So that'll give us a full preview of what that Pluto in Aquarius whole time period is going to be like. And then we also have Mars that's been in Gemini for a pretty long time because it was retrograde and now it's back direct, but it's also moving into Cancer near the end of this month as well. And I think that also is pretty big for just this energy and what's been all happening lately. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So thinking about the first thing that's coming up is the full moon in Virgo, and Virgo and the full moon the full moon in general is like a culmination. It's kind of like bringing everything to the surface, bringing everything to light, right? Everything's illuminated. You kind of can see the full picture when there's a full moon. Things kind of round out, or you kind of sometimes people get closure around full moon time, or just kind of what do they call it? Like a circling back, basically, of something that may have happened previously or months prior, things like that. And Virgo is all about, purification. It's all about optimizing things and making shit better than what it was, or whatever it was, wherever it was when Virgo encountered it, right? Virgo is all about helping and being of service, but Virgo is also about, just bringing things back to purity in a way, which is why Virgo is represented by the Virgin, right? That doesn't necessarily mean, that you just don't do anything. It means that we can always work at, extracting what it doesn't need to be we don't need any more, and getting things back to a pure state, basically. So that's why Virgo also rules the digestive system, right? That's where everything goes when we eat, in order to figure out what our body needs to keep and what we need to let go of, right? Yeah, and the gut. And what is the gut tied to? The gut is tied to what? Our intuition. The other side of Virgo is Pisces, right? So that intuitive and more feeling nature, right? Virgo is like logic and more of like details, right? Whereas Pisces is all about, what does it feel like? What's the vibration of it? What's the energy around it? So that gut is that Pisces Virgo connection, right? That intuition, that gut feeling, those kinds of things. And it's interesting to have the Saturn moving into Pisces the same day as a Virgo full moon. I think that's like really trippy to me, because you have that opposition playing out, even if it's not right. Like degree wise, it's not exact, but it's still a sign based opposition that's happening that day. That experience and that catapulting that Saturn moving into the Saturn Pisces era, right? So having that Virgo influence and that Virgo opposition of kind of, I think of this Saturn movement, Saturn through Pisces, as almost like a balancing thing, right? I feel like Saturn being in Capricorn and Aquarius was really tough for everybody because Saturn was in its home signs. And so I feel like whenever a planet is moving through its home sign, signs that it rules, it doubles down on that energy, right? Because it's like, okay, I'm going to turn up, right? I'm at home here. Like, I know what this is like. I'm going to kick back and give you everything that I do, right? Saturn's all about discipline, responsibility, kind of taking charge of your life. It's all about time, right? Managing time and things like that, and getting shit together. Really, Saturn is talks a lot about, or just kind of brings forth energy of like hard lessons, right? When we push against ourselves, when we have that resistance, it also helps us push past our limits, right? We think of Saturn as the last planet that we can visibly see in the sky, so we all for a long time thought that that was it, that was the limit, right? And so Saturn can also be pushing past those boundaries, right? And I think as Saturn moves into Pisces, it's going to be a lot more of that, pushing yourself past your boundaries and realizing that you can go further, you can do more, you can take your fantasies and realities and they can be together, right? Well, of course, like we've had a lot of separation, where it's like Pisces is all about things being one and things coming together and the wholeness of things, right? And where I feel like Saturn is all about bounds and structure and all these kinds of things. So thinking about all of that, and having the also Virgo influence, which is the opposite or the sister sign of Pisces, and that kind of continuum, is really beautiful to me, to have that be the first initial taste that we get of the Saturn moving into Pisces with that Virgo influence and that balance in a way. And also just thinking about like the moon and Saturn. I sometimes think of the moon being the mother, or we look at the moon as the mother and Saturn being the father. So that also, that balance, that opposition happening too, with a full moon happening and Saturn being on the other side of that full moon, right? With the sun and the moon being opposite, and Saturn being opposite that moon as well, and all that kind of masculine energy balancing out this very powerful lunar energy as well, for this. So, and I just think that the initial kind of potent energy that happens when we kind of experience these shifts is really, it also just kind of comes through the entire kind of space of it all. And yeah, so I'm like, for me, I've heard a lot of different things about Saturn and being in Pisces, but I really think it's going to be a beautiful transit. And I'm more of an optimist, so maybe it's just me, but I'm also a Saturn and Pisces person, retrograde. So I'll be going through my Saturn return as well. And I really feel like, one, Saturn is enjoying the 12th house. And so the 12th house, I look at the 12th house and Pisces as having similarities and energetically, right? The 12th house is all about recluse and escape and kind of losing oneself or losing the ego, right? And self undoing and all these kinds of underlying subconscious things. And who are we when there's nothing left? Who are we when we close our eyes at night, right? In the dark. So having Saturn be kind of happy here or enjoy here, it reminds me too that like I feel like Saturn can bring a lot of, I think of the quote, finding the calm in the chaos, right? That quote being kind of the theme of the Saturn and Pisces transit is like being able to create structure for the water to flow properly, right? Pisces being a water sign, you kind of think of Pisces as all over the place, it's mutable, it can just be merge and mesh with anything. And Saturn coming in and be like, all right, let's like get this together so that it can flow better or flow with more of a purpose, right? And more of a direction and force versus just kind of raging wild everywhere, that kind of energy. And so I really think that this transit, if it's utilized well and we kind of allow ourselves to be in tune with like meshing what feels right, but also like creating structure for ourselves in the certain areas of our life that we need it, can really be powerful because you have literally Jupiter energy mixing with Saturn energy to create something. And when you bring those two together, it's like you pretty much are unstoppable because Saturn's like, okay, let's be realistic. What do we need to do to get this done? And Jupiter's like, the opportunity that comes to be able to do it, right? Jupiter's like, let's go. We got these big dreams, these big ideas. And Saturn's like, okay, well, what's the steps that we need to take to get there? So think that's how I think about this transit that's going to be happening for the next 2.5 years, is being a very balanced kind of way of moving through. Of course, it's going to look different for everybody because it's in different houses and places in your chart, and it's aspecting different planets in your chart or potent points in your chart, things like that. But the overall feel and energy, I think, of this transit is that kind of bringing the calm, finding the calm within the chaos, and finding structure, being able to structure the flow, right? It's like Pisces is like the creativity that you have, all the ideas and greatness that you have within you, that's just like madness swirling around in your brain. And Saturn comes, it's like, all right, well, if we just kind of prioritize this here, let's move this over here, let's put this here, that structure, then we can complete our task. It's literally like connecting the left and right brain and getting them to work together versus how I feel like we function a lot in one side and we're never totally like balanced. We're kind of always trying to find that balance, but having a hard time doing that. um so yeah. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the shift that's happening too for like the signs, because fixed signs have been under fire for like the past 2.5 years, with Saturn being in Aquarius, the eclipses happening in Taurus and Scorpio for the past couple, over a little bit of like year or so. And so I feel like the fixed signs will get like a kind of breath of fresh air, like if you have a lot of heavy fixed placements, or just looking at where the fixed energy is in your chart, right? So if you're a Leo rising, a Taurus rising, a Scorpio rising, or a Aquarius rising, then that energy has been really potent on your, first house, 10th house, seventh house, and fourth house. You're very potent, active houses, right? The self, family, significant others or others in general, and, your career or your kind of lifestyle that you're putting out into the world. And so having this very, like, very tough, like, get your shit together kind of energy on us, and that pressure, I feel like sometimes Saturn can feel like pressure, a lot of pressure, um, and can feel like you're kind of pushing through a lot of obstacles. So having that move into a mutable sign and move out of that fixed energy is going to feel, I feel like it's going to feel like, okay, we can kind of breathe and come up for some air, especially as the nodes are changing too into Libra and Aries. So yeah, I think it's going to be really nice. And I also think that it's going to feel very different for mutable signs, right? Because we felt the kind of weight of Saturn in the fixed signs, but I feel like fixed is already very persistent and like hunkered down on like, this is what it is. And so I feel like Saturn in fixed signs can feel very like, God damn, this shit is not ending. Like, when am I going to feel different? When is this shit going to be over? Like, Here's I feel like Saturn moving into a mutable sign, it'll be kind of more up and down, like right, like just flowing and moving and changing and feeling different versus like being in a fixed sign and being very persistently this way. Like this is what the struggle has been, and it's gonna keep being this same struggle like till whatever, you know. It moving into mutable energy is gonna feel totally different. And I think too, it was, but prior to it being in Aquarius in that fixed air, it was in fucking cardinal Earth, like the last of the Earth signs, right? And so that can sometimes feel very similar to that fixed energy Earth, and fixed kind of feel very similar, have a similar kind of taste to it to me, even though they're not the same. But I feel like going from, very strong Earth to mental fixed energy can be very taxing, and it has been very taxing, very obviously. Like if you look at the past 4 or 5 years, it's been hard, and I think on everybody, like nobody escaped it, nobody could skip over it, or whatever, everybody felt it in some way, shape, or form. And we see that all over, right? Like that kind of harshness, or that like rigid feeling that Saturn in the fixed signs and then in that Earth sign kind of brought on. And a lot of like physical things happening, physical, a lot of mental health stuff going on, people struggling a lot with those two specific things. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it kind of moving now. And I think in mutable, it's gonna be a lot more tolerable. And I feel the balance of it being in a Jupiter ruled sign and Neptunian sign, because Pisces is co ruled by Jupiter and Neptune. I feel that energy will really balance the Saturn kind of hard, rigid energy out and bring about a nice flow and kind of shift. I do think that some of the downsides could be struggles, like people who, I think we all struggle with different types of addictions and different vices that we have, or stuff that we, um, yeah, basically are like addicted to or have a hard time getting over. I think that might be something that comes up a lot, like addictions and drug stuff and alcoholism and gambling and those kinds of things. I think those are things that you'll start to feel. I think a lot of people will start to feel like I either need to kick this, or they fall deeper into it with Saturn, because the pressure will feel very intense, right? Around those kinds of things. Because what are the themes of Pisces? Pisces is escapism. Pisces is, um, being just in connection with things outside of this realm of what's known and what's seen, right? And so those kinds of things really come into a head, and having to make a decision and be and struggling some, and probably the struggle being around making those decisions of like, should I need to stop smoking or whatever. It's like I'm not responding to this the same way that I used to. It's not doing the same thing that I used to do for me anymore. I'm having to smoke even more now to get whatever I'm trying to get from it. Or I'm drinking, I need to start drinking less. It's starting to really take a toll. All these things, feeling the weight of those things. Because you got to remember, Saturn rules Capricorn, rules the bones, the structure of our body, right? And so that stuff also having this more really physical effect, basically, with and that connection of like the kind of spiritual, mental, everything, like really feeling the connection of like my mind is connected to my body, is connected to my spirit. Everything works together. There is no separation, right? So I think as Saturn moves into Pisces, we'll start to really experience like, oh, if I don't take care of this, my mind right now, it's gonna come through my body, and I'm feeling that immediately. Or like I'm really starting to notice like the patterns that's happening because of me not eating well, right? And how that affects my brain now. Or sitting up watching a bunch of bullshit every day, or just drama on TV, and how that's like starting to really fuck with my psyche and fuck with the way that I even carry myself in the world, right? Those kinds of things, right? You think that you got to remember that Neptune and Pisces energy also rules things like film and vibration. So vibration literally moving through the body, the bones, all that stuff is going to be a big piece of the Saturn in Pisces. That is things that I would pay attention to. I won't say like, oh, it's going to be so negative, because I'm just not one of those type of people. I mean, I could be like, I'm just not somebody that's going to sit and be like, oh, it's going to be so bad. Like, should be bad and should be good. Like, it could go either way. So yeah, and I'd rather look more to like, what are the more positive ways we can channel this energy and move it through us and move with this energy, because that's what astrology is all about for me, is understanding the energies at play and being able to find your place in that. Like, what is, instead of trying to go against the current and the flow of nature, because that's literally what it is. We're just watching nature play out, right, in the ways that it wants to, and we get to be a part of that and we get to experience it. So how do we move so that we have more seamless kind of flow in this life and get to just experience and be, versus trying to fight against everything and like push against this or that, right? And obviously there's all kinds of factors like societal things and stuff like that that we clearly have to, push and fight against and stuff like that. But I'm saying what I'm talking about is nature, right? The planets, the moon pulls the tides. That's nature. It controls the waters of the world, of our earth. That's nature. You know what I'm saying? The sun, the relationship between the sun and the moon create in the earth, the sun, moon, and the earth create our seasons. That's nature. Like, I'm not talking about, all this made up shit or shit that's been concocted and created in this space. I'm talking about actual nature and the ways that we can work with nature and be one with it, which is really, if you think about it, what kind of Pisces talks about is being one. Like, noticing that I'm the same, I'm different, but I'm also the same as this tree. We live, breathe, and die, that kind of stuff. So yeah. Let me see what I got in my notes, just because I want to make sure that I'm remembering all the things I want to talk about. Yeah, and I guess I'll go back to a little bit more about the full moon. I usually do prompts on the full moon, and I think for this full moon, with it being in Virgo, it might be opposite. I wonder, is it opposite? It's obviously opposite Neptune, but I'm wondering how close that opposition is. But just thinking about, how can I think the biggest question is, how can I structure and kind of organize things in my life for the easiest flow, right? Or how have I constrained myself? Another question would be, how have I constrained myself or boxed myself in from my own worries, right? Virgo is very like a worrying sign. My own worries or self-doubt or perfectionism, things like that. How have I stopped myself from really living into my full potential, right? And moving into or allowing my full creativity? What has stopped me or kept me from really living in that, right? I feel like Virgo energy can sometimes be like, oh, very picky or particular, and like, oh, but this isn't quite exactly right, so that means that I can't do anything, right? When it's like, you work with the other side of that is Pisces, and been like, accepting, this is where I'm at, this is what I got, we're going to move forward with this, right? So finding that balance in the energy, and that's what that kind of push and pull of Pisces Virgo is like seeing the bigger picture and being like, okay, I don't have all the little details that Virgo kind of wants, but we could still move with something, right? And the other side of that is Pisces kind of being like, too not very discerning. So right, so then the Virgo kicks in, is like, well, we need to kind of like really, let's get a little bit of organization here, let's put something in, right? So having to constantly kind of go back and forth with that is the energy of this full moon. And where have you kind of found yourself on the balance beam with that, right? And you can look to where Pisces and Virgo is in your chart, right? So if you're Pisces rising, that Virgo is literally going to be on your 7th house. The way your outlook on life, the way you kind of push forward through life, the lens that you're seeing life through this lifetime. And then the 7th house is the way others see you, your relation to other people, your commitments, and your agreements that you made in this lifetime, and how you need to maneuver with others, right? Or but it might not even be specifically a person. It could be another entity of any kind. It could be your business. It could be in love. It could be that just connection in general. Connection. That could be negative connection. That can be positive connection. But that's first and seventh house. If you have Pisces in the first house and Virgo in the whichever one, either way, that's the continuum, right? If you're, Virgo second house is going to be all about I look at the second house as the gifts that we have that we come into this life with that we need to be sharing. So the ways that we're also reciprocated for that, our money, right? In more modern terms, our money, the ways that we kind of generate money, our values, what we value, what is value, how we show up is valuable, even though, the moment you come into this world, you're a value, but what you view as valuable in yourself, in others, things like that. And things that we attach to ourselves, our labels, right? I'm an astrologer. I didn't come in the world as an astrologer. I acquired that and I added it to who I am, right? My name, it was given to me. It's not something that I came into the world with. It was given to me. Those are second house things, right? That we learn to value and hold within ourselves. So that's second house. And then you have the other side of that is Pisces. That Pisces eighth house is going to be all about the things that you share with other people, other people's money, other people's problems, or things that come onto you, right? If we're talking about the things that we have attached to ourselves, now it's things that we start to acquire from others and that we give to others. So that exchange, that meshing, that intimacy that comes with building connection and going into business with people, things like that, right? So that you'll see those themes in that way. Third house is going to be your rituals, your community, your immediate, your siblings, your kind of immediate environment, your neighborhood, that stuff, the things that you kind of see day to day that are really repetitive and common, right? Whereas in like your rituals, so it might even have something specifically to do with like the bath you take every night, whatever, those kinds of things, your sleep routine and shit like that, your drive to work every day, that kind of day to day, really just close stuff. And then you have it opposing that ninth house Pisces, right? If you're third house Virgo, then your ninth house Pisces, and it's going to have to do with your kind of also third house could have to do too with school friends, younger years, developmental stuff, right? Things that happened when you were a kid, that kind of stuff, your high school years, that type of stuff. Whereas, ninth house, which is opposite of that, is going to be the more drawn out things that you do, like planning for a long trip, or even like people that aren't in your immediate family, people that are kind of foreign to you, that aren't your typical people that you would be around. So people from other, countries, places, things like that. Also, if third house is kind of more logical things that you learn, how to talk, how to walk, all the things that you need to learn when you're a kid. That ninth house is all the things that you learn on your own, that you decide, this is calls to my spirit, my soul, my higher purpose, whatever. So religion, things like that, right? That speak more to our soul, our spirit, right? That we're kind of drawn to. So it's like higher education, college and shit like that. And then moving forward, if you're a fourth house Virgo, so if you're a fourth house Virgo, that means you're a Virgo, Leo, Cancer. What's before Cancer? Gemini. You're a Gemini rising. That fourth house is Virgo. It's going to talk about your upbringing, your parents, your emotional kind of baseline, your core, right? Like your more private self. It's going to have to do more with your private self, your lineage, your roots, things that came before you, the people that came before you. And the other side of that, Pisces, is where you're going, the people that, the impact you have outwardly, your outward self, your public life, those types of things, right? Yeah. And then moving on to fifth house. Fifth house is our creativity. I look at fifth house as also childlike things and children in general, creativity being literally, and creativity also being really tied to sex, because that's the way that you make a child. Like, that's the only way that a child can get here, is through sex. You know what I'm saying? So pleasure, all those kinds of things, fun, creativity, joy, that's all fifth house stuff. And that's also going to be opposing that 11th house, which would be, the people you share that joy with. So your networks, your friend groups, stuff like that, other people's kids, right? It might be your stepkids, if they're not your kids in that fifth house, that kind of stuff, your aspirations and dreams, right? And then the people that you find that share those same talents, dreams, and aspirations as you in that 11th house, that's that kind of space. And then lastly, 6th house, 12th house stuff. If you have Pisces or Virgo in either one of those, 6th house is work, responsibilities. It's people that you work for, people that work for you, right? It's your pets, things that serve you and things that you serve, right? Your health, right? If your routine's off, if your structure is off and all kind of fucked up and crazy, you probably don't have good health, right? That's what that is. Physical health, injuries, things like that. That 12th house is going to be mental health, right? The mind, the subconscious mind, retreat. That could be, way back it was exile, right? But it could be mental hospitals, it could be jail, it could be retreats, it could be, being a monk, all kinds of stuff like that. Self-undoing, right? Whereas like 6th house is the self-doing, like we need to keep everything together. 12th house is like we need to release, right? And so if you and you can look at that any kind of way, because either way it's going to be flipped, right? So if you're a Virgo or Pisces, it's going to be balancing 1st and 7th house, right? We're talking about risings. If you're a Leo, if you're a Leo or an Aquarius, 2nd house and 8th house is going to be where the balance is. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. I'm used to like dialoguing with actual people, so it's weird to talk just to a screen. So I'm always going to be like, does that make sense? But yeah. So hopefully that makes sense. What I'm saying is you can look at it both ways, because the houses, they work together, right? Just like the signs are a continuum. Leo, Aquarius, Virgo, Pisces, etc. Yeah. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about Saturn being in Pisces and being immutable. So now where Saturn is focusing all of its energy is in the mutable areas of your chart or of your life, right? So if you're a Gemini, Pisces, Sag, or Virgo rising, or maybe you have, how do I check the chat? I don't even see a chat. Are there questions? I can't even, how do I do this? I don't really see how I'm supposed to check this chat. Okay. I don't know. Oh, they said I don't have access to, no, I don't know. Oh, child. Well, what I'll do is I'll check the chat. Hopefully the chat questions will be as comments, and then I can actually respond to people. That's what I'm hoping, because I can't see any of the comments. But maybe let me see if I like join from my phone, then maybe I'll be able to like actually look at the chat. Yeah, can you help me? I'm gonna have my sister help me, because I feel like an old lady. Don't know what I'm doing. How you do this? How do you see the chat? See, there's no like.
Maybe have you tried this?
Yeah, I clicked that, but I don't see like.
Did you just turn off?
No, I never seen any comments or anything at all. Hold potentially, maybe that's why.
Allow all comments.
Oh, okay. Allow all comments. Why would they do that? Now, why would they do that?
Is it on now?
Okay, but I still don't see the comments.
Let me get my phone.
Okay, I'm gonna look at. I'm gonna try to. My sister's gonna help me figure out the comment situation. Yeah, but so next, moving on to Saturn being in the mutable areas of your chart or your life, right? So if you're a mutable rising, Pisces, Virgo, Sag, or Gemini, then it's going to be on those four angular houses: self, others, where you going, where you come from, right? Parents, that type of stuff. If you're a let's see, fixed rising sign, so Leo, Aquarius, um Taurus or Scorpio, it's going to be in those succeeding houses, so those houses that are next to the houses right after the angular houses. So second house, yeah, because Leo, second house would be Virgo. Yeah. Second house, eighth house, fifth house, and 11th house. It's going to be those houses that are going to be the themes that you're going to be kind of seeing this Saturn energy really focused in, right? The house of second house is the house of your money. The eighth house is the house of other people's money, intimacy, your values, and then fifth house, 11th house is your, like I just said, your kind of joy, talents, and pleasure, that type of stuff, and your friends, dreams, aspirations, networking, that type of stuff. And then if you are a cardinal sign, if you're cardinal heavy or cardinal rising, so Libra, Aries, Cancer, Capricorn, is going to be in your fixing house, your cadent houses. Well, these are houses that are always kind of working kind of hard. So Saturn is going to be focused in those houses. So sixth house, your health houses, 6 and 12, mental health, physical health, releasing, keeping shit together, right? And then your social, kind of, well, third house is a social house, but ninth house is more of a spiritual house. So also third and ninth house, right? Your environment. So there might be stuff going on specifically with your siblings, your environment, your neighborhood, stuff like that be really focused. And ninth house is travel, things like that, that type of stuff. So pay attention to where the energy is. And I think that's why it's important that even if you don't have a big understanding of astrology, if you're not like super in depth, if you know things just like what's mutable, fixed, and cardinal, it's easy for you to kind of figure out, oh, okay, I know Saturn's going to be in a cardinal sign, so I need to pay attention to the cardinal energy in my chart, right? That's where that kind of energy is going to be focused, because it's going to be making aspects to those four signs, right? It's either going to be conjunct something in your chart if you have like a cardinal sun, moon, whatever, or it's going to be square or opposite, right? Yeah, so having these kind of things play out based on that, right? So for example, when I say that, if you have experienced, obviously we've all experienced the past couple of years, but if you were a Leo, Scorpio, Taurus, or Aquarius, it felt crazier for you. It felt harder. Like it felt like more of a struggle if you have heavy fixed energy. The past 2 years or so has been extra, felt extra kind of just damned. You know what I'm saying? If you have those signs, somebody like me, who's a Leo sun, Taurus moon, Scorpio Jupiter, literally having this huge, big ass like square in my chart from all the Saturn energy and the eclipses, it felt like, God damn, you just ain't letting up, is you? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, if you know those things, it can be helpful for you to understand your life and why things feel a certain way and why shit is just moving a certain way, or maybe it feels easier and you can take advantage of that energy in that time frame, right? If you're having a lot of easy flow, right, maybe you're having trines happening, so things are more easily flowing and opening up, right? Then you could use that energy in a different way. But also, remembering too to not always think of things as just negative and positive, that it's both. It's all of it. And it's going to manifest in many different ways. Yeah. All right. So moving on, later in the month, we have yes.
So to get the comments on, you have to select it when you first like set all the settings to go live. So you have to end it and then go. I don't know
well, I ain't finna end it. I'll just see if there's comments on it later or something.
You want to see from my phone? You can.
Yeah. Can you see the comments?
Yes. Do you have another thing? Because my sister's trying to call me.
Oh.
Do you have your phone?
Yeah. Can you go to it on mine and then just like turn the sound off, and that way I can see the comments. That way I'll be able to respond to you guys if you guys are leaving me comments, because I can't see them right now. So next we have Pluto moving into Aquarius, and this is another huge transit because this is going to be a generational transit. It's going to stay in Aquarius for a long time, just like it's been in Capricorn for what, maybe like 14 years, I think, or something like that, 13 14 years. So once it moves into Aquarius, it's going to be there for a whole.
You can look at them through there.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm looking at the comments finally. So I'm gonna actually slow down. I'm gonna look through these comments so I can see if there were specific questions, and then we'll get back, and then we'll move into the Pluto into Aquarius. Okay, my B day landed on a ruling planet Saturn day. It was tough. Yeah, girl. I was born on a Saturn day, so I just feel very responsible all my life. And it's like, sometimes I need to learn how to kick back and just relax. Literally just gave a week. Yes. Okay. So you're in alignment. And I think you're a Virgo rising. So that full moon kicking in, like starting to see things, and especially literally being a Virgo rising and being like, oh, I'm giving this up. And I think I actually seen you tweet something like your body didn't agree with it or something like that. If I'm correct, I think I've seen this on Twitter, and that kind of literally ruling the digestive system, Virgo being like, yeah, this is not doing what it's supposed to do. This is not helping us. It's time to let it go, right? That literally. Somebody said, I feel like sugars, starches are I can't really. Something like that. They talking about the sugars and starches too. So yeah, the sugars and starches too. Yeah, all that shit. It's like your body going back to that Saturn moving into Pisces, opposing that Virgo energy, is gonna start really feeling it and experiencing that on a like deeper level. Water, it makes up what, like 75% of our body. So the water signs, that's why our bodies feel so much, because the waters can be tainted. If you're not feeding it the right stuff, right? All that kind of energy, all that type of stuff. Let me see if there's any other questions on here. Oh, y'all just on here keying. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Okay. I just went to chat. I don't see any other questions. So now I'm move on to Pluto moving into Aquarius. So first of all, if you don't know Pluto and what Pluto is about, I'm going to give you my perspective of Pluto. I also just highly encourage people to do your research on the stuff that you're interested in, right? If you hear something and you're like, it clicks something, go look it up and like learn about these things, because it's probably something prominent in your chart or an energy that is really resonant for you, because you may have a lot of Plutonic energy or maybe Saturn energy in your chart. And so obviously if you're feeling like, oh, okay, really interested or drawn into something that I'm saying, or a planet or a sign, look more into it, and look more into it in the sense of you looking at your own chart as well, and what is coming up for you. So Pluto is a planet of kind of rebirth, destruction, and regeneration. It's all about transformation. It's about treasure. It's about excavating, going deep, right? And so it's about pulling out those weeds, that type of stuff, digging deep. If we think about like the mythology and stuff, it's all this kind of stuff about the underworld and, seeds and blah, 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 and blah, 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 right? So all this type of stuff. And Pluto energy is small, but it's super powerful. And if you notice Pluto energy, Pluto's far away, so it's a slower moving planet in accordance to us, right? Because of our distance, Pluto seems to move very slow for us, around us, or around the sun in comparison to us. And so it for us, it affects us in a generational time period. Whereas a planet like Mercury, we're very close to Mercury, well, not very close, but we're pretty close to Mercury in comparison to Pluto. So Mercury's effects are felt on a day-to-day basis, right? That's why we have multiple Mercury retrogrades throughout the year, and we're like, damn, I done forgot my flights messed up, all this stupid shit that's happening on a day-to-day basis with Mercury. Whereas like Pluto is happening over a long time period. The energy is so long. Pluto hasn't even, since we discovered Pluto, we haven't even seen Pluto go through all the signs, right? And so Pluto Pluto is all about the depth and it's about extremes, right? If you've ever known a Scorpio person who is co-ruled by Pluto, they can feel very intense and extreme, and they can really go from here to here. And sometimes there's no in between with Pluto. Pluto is like, we either doing it or we not. You better get it together. You either gonna self-destruct or you gonna heal, right? That's kind of Pluto's themes. It's like we don't have no time for no middle ground to be kind of finicking in the middle and trying to play, So if we think about Pluto moving into Aquarius and thinking about, you can even look at the time, right? We're moving into all this like metaverse and virtual reality stuff. We've slowly been inching there, right? Like over time. And that's what you see, right? I think Aquarius rules a lot of like technology, advancement stuff, right? Aquarius is co-ruled by Saturn and Uranus. Saturn is the more structure. Saturn is structure. Saturn is rigidity, right? And if you think about Aquarius people, if you've ever known like really heavy Aquarius placements, they can be very rigid in their thinking. Like this is the way. This is the right thought to have. Like, no, I know what I'm talking about. You don't know what you're talking about, right? I just know, right? That's the kind of Aquarius energy, or like, and you can think of Aquarius as kind of being ahead, right? That kind of ahead energy where it's like, we've been did that. Like y'all just not catching up kind of energy, right? And like in some ways, like a godlike complex, right? Is like kind of Aquarius energy. And so thinking about Pluto moving into this sign, you can know that things are gonna, like, I think this next generation of babies that are coming up, if you look at like the generation of babies that were Pluto and Capricorn, they all seem like little old people, like they've been here before, right? Capricorn rules like old things and kind of like time, and I feel like Saturn has that very grandpa like energy, you know what I'm saying? And Aquarius is kind of like, Aquarius is a version of Saturn that is like, okay, we know that used to work, but why don't we try something new now? Like, I'm tired of doing that same old shit, so let's do something new now, right? And so I think these new babies, as we move from being in Capricorn, you kind of will see them kind of be more like, still kind of like older people, like they've been here before, but more like having that kind of springy kind of feel to them, like they want to do other shit, like, or learn something new, or bring in new energy, like, okay, well, yeah, we've been doing this has been working, but like now we want to try some new shit, like maybe we can even redo it, or regenerate things, or bring things into new, right? That's the kind of energy that I think this Pisces, but Pluto and so many things. Pluto in Aquarius is bringing that more changing of the structures and really putting forth the actual plan towards things changing. Whereas I feel like Pluto in Capricorn has been kind of a realization of like the structures that we have in place. All this kind of fuck the system energy, and very like, we see that this shit has not worked, and what used to work and what has worked for so long, or quote unquote worked for so long, it doesn't. It actually doesn't. Like, Pluto came in Capricorn in 2008, and I believe Barack Obama was elected as president then, and it really, it kind of was like, I think it really sparked a lot. It opened up a lot of stuff around like, wow, this system really isn't shit, and it's a lot of shit that's just for show. And I think that the Pluto has been slowly breaking down the system that we have, our government. And I'm speaking about the US. I don't know. I mean, I obviously see a whole bunch of stuff going on all around the world. You see so many rebellions and people, all these protests and things like that. And that feels very Pluto and Capricorn to me. People being fed up, right? Time, feeling like we're just over this. It's just been so long, like just drained and just bled out of all this stuff, right? The structure is just crumbling now, which Pluto is literally like, you have to destroy it in order to rebuild it. That's why Scorpio's rule is like, Pluto and Scorpio energy is like depicted as the phoenix, right? Literally burned to ashes and then coming back regenerated. So all the structures, literally Capricorn structure crumbling, Pluto, right? And so as we move into Aquarius, you start to see how I think that structures are being rewired, rebuilt. It's also about the mind, right? Aquarius is a mental sign. So changing of the mind, rebuilding of the mind, regeneration of the brain, or destruction of it, right? People losing their minds, literally. I mean, we've been seeing this. Like, it's slowly getting, it feels like it's becoming more potent for people to just kind of like fucking go crazy. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, because I think sometimes we need to kind of lose it in order to get back. Hi everybody in the chat. Yes, that rebellious energy, exactly. That Aquarius energy is very rebellious, right? It's like, fuck that. But the thing about Aquarius is sometimes Aquarius energy can be a rebel with no cause, right? Sometimes you just want to go against, right? And so what Aquarius energy has to do or needs is that structure of Saturn to be like, okay, well, let's focus this. Like, what are we actually doing? What's the reality of this? What is the reality of me fighting this? Am I just fighting just to fight? Like, am I just disagreeing to disagree? Or is there actually something behind this that I'm actually trying to pull forth or convey or bring into the awareness? You got to think too, also Aquarius rules community, right? And people, the networking aspect of community, and people coming together for a bigger cause. And so I think Pluto in Aquarius too is going to be really, you'll see more of community rebuilding itself, some communities falling apart, some things really rebuilding, that kind of energy. Seeing like a lot of the destruction of some things and the rebuilding of other things that have fallen apart or maybe have been dismantled, coming back together. I think with the Pluto and Aquarius, things that really need to be coming back together, you'll see maybe that happening, and then other things falling apart and being disintegrated and kind of over with. Yeah. And we'll get a very clear picture, I think, of the energy that is going to bring after, I think, Pluto moves into Aquarius on the 23rd, I believe, either the 23rd or 25th. And then it's going to move back into Capricorn on the 11th of June. And so you'll feel the subtle energy shift, right? Like all this stuff happening, and then you kind of see it move back, and it's going to move back forward. So yeah. And then lastly, I just want to touch a little bit on Mercury moving into Cancer, which I think is on the 25th. Yeah, I think Pluto moves into Aquarius on the 23rd, and then Mars is moving into Cancer on the 25th. And normally this wouldn't be such a big deal, but because Mars has been in Gemini, messy ass Gemini, for so fucking long, and I'm a Gemini Mars. So I was like, at first I was like, yes, people will feel what I feel all the time. The madness that's just going on inside of me and around me all the time. I swear to God, having a Mars Gemini is like, is literally like putting out fires like all the time. Because it's just chaos everywhere. I don't know why. Like, you know, and it either will come from me, or it's if I don't produce the chaos, then something around me is going to be happening, and I need to be mutable enough and flexible enough to be like, okay, dealing with all the craziness, right? And so when Mars moved into Gemini, I was like, oh, it's gonna be here for a while. I was like, oh yes, now people see what we go through as us Gemini placements, what it's like to be in our bodies, in our heads. And I'm a Mars Gemini on the first house, literally in my 12th house, but it's like conjunct my first house, my ascendant. And so feeling that like strong, just messy energy all the time, like in my subconscious, just like my brain is like on 1,000 all the time. And then seeing that manifest in the world all the time, crazy shit happening all the time, that I'm having to be like, how did I end up here? Why am I the person that had to witness this or be present for this crazy shit? It could have been anybody but me, you know? So just thinking about all the all the Gemini Mars energy, I know people are tired of it because I get tired of myself. Okay, I'm like, Bobby, relax, chill the fuck out, like get a grip, just breathe, you know what I'm saying? And so I was excited for it at first, but now I'm like, I'm over this shit, especially when it was retrograde and it was more internal. It was like I just felt the fire internally all the time. I was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore, you know? So I think as it moves into Cancer, even though Mars does not like being in Cancer, we're going to feel so much better because it won't feel so much like just a million fires everywhere that we're having to put out. Like every time you turn around, okay, you fix this one thing, now it's something else, right? Especially if you have that Gemini energy in one of your, like for me, it's in my 12th house. So it's literally 12th and first house ish. So it's literally happening. A lot of it was happening in one of my Caden houses that I'm constantly already having to work a lot. Like this house has to do a lot of work all the time anyway. So sixth house Gemini people, 12th house Gemini people, third house Gemini people, ninth house Gemini people, feeling that energy there. And those houses that you already have to, these houses already have to do a lot of work. It just feels exhausting. It's exhausting. Okay. And so I think that as it moves into Cancer in the water, it'll just feel more, probably more emotional, obviously, but I think it'll feel more like cleansing, especially after all that being in the air for so long and being so everybody just in their heads about everything, being able to really settle more. I feel like the water and the earth, it settles, right? Water and earth settles where air and fire rises, and so it's settling more into our bodies, right? Like the fire, or that kind of, not fire, but that like Mars energy settling more. It'll feel more settled versus just like all over exacerbated. Everywhere you look, everywhere you turn. Cancer is more reclusive, you know, it's more like to myself, to my comforts, you know. So Mars moving into myself and my comforts in my body, you know, I think it'll be much, much easier, even though Mars doesn't really like being in Cancer, but I still feel like Mars needs it. Like you need the timeout after all the shit you done caused up in Gemini. It's like Mars will get the timeout that it needs. It won't be able to do all the crazy shit it's been doing because I kind of think of Mars and Gemini as like, I don't know. I don't even know, but it was crazy. So I feel like it'll get the timeout it needs. Mars will get the timeout it needs in Cancer. So yeah. I think that's all I'm gonna talk about today. It's almost an hour, and I don't want to take up so much time that I just keep running my mouth. I feel like this is a good stopping point. I am happy to open up for questions because I have my chat open. So I'll stay on for a little bit if you have specific questions or things you wanted to ask me or any thoughts that you wanted to share. Please feel free to drop it in the chat because I can see it and I will answer them. Yeah. And then I'll give it a few minutes. And if there are no questions or thoughts or comments, then I'll close out. Is Virgo getting some money? Possibly. You could be. 7th house, Virgo. You have the Saturn that's its opposite. So I feel like that balancing being can call in that type of energy. Depends on whatever you're. I don't know what else is going on in your chart or what you're doing, but yeah, it's possible. Pisces is co-ruled by Jupiter, so the Saturn in Pisces, yeah, I think it could be a good. I think it's going to be a good transit. A good transit for creativity, structuring things in your life for them to kind of flow better. So if it's money that you're looking to flow more into your life, then you might need to be creating more structure around like your money, structure around the flow of your money. How are you making the money? Structure around how you make your money. Structure around your creativity for you to make money. Yeah. All right. Well, if there is no more questions or thoughts or feelings, I will close out. Thank y'all so much for joining. I appreciate it, and I'm excited to do these more. This is my first one, which is why I had so many little hiccups and trying to figure out the comments and stuff. But thank y'all for sticking through with me. And yeah, I'm excited to talk more. All right. Have a good one.